I don't talk about this night often, not because I don't remember it, but because every time I try, I hear that same sound again, the slow, scraping drag of something heavy against asphalt. It happened in October of 2018 on a lonely stretch of Highway 97, somewhere between Oregon and California. I was driving home from a job interview, exhausted, broke, and honestly, just done with life for a while. It was one of those nights where the road feels infinite, your headlights cutting through fog, the world reduced to black and white shadows and the constant hum of the engine. It was about 1:47 a.m. when I saw the first thing that didn't make sense. There was a car on the shoulder up ahead, hazard lights blinking, both doors open. It looked like an old silver Chevy, maybe late 90s. I slowed down automatically, expecting to see someone flagging me down, but there was no one. Just that rhythmic flashing and the faint hiss of air from one of its tires. I remember thinking maybe the driver had gone to get help until I noticed the passenger door was swinging slowly, like someone had just stepped out. And then I saw it. A trail of dark stains on the pavement, leading away from the car and disappearing into the tree line. At first, I thought it was oil, but when I pulled over, rolled down the window, and caught the smell, it wasn't oil. It was blood. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but there was this faint sound coming from the woods, a kind of soft whimper. It was subtle, like someone crying but trying to stay quiet. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and stepped out. The night air was freezing, the kind that bites your skin. The smell of iron and wet leaves hung heavy. I followed the sound down a narrow path, branches snapping under my boots, fog swirling around my knees. The crying stopped. I called out, "Hello? You okay out here?" No answer. Just silence. Then from somewhere to my right came the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching on the gravel shoulder of the road. I turned my light, expecting to see another person, but what I saw instead made my whole body go cold. There was a man standing there, or at least I thought it was a man. He was tall but slouched forward, like his spine was bent the wrong way. His clothes were soaked, clinging to his frame, and his face, God, his face looked wrong, like it had been melted and then set again. His eyes were completely black, no whites, just glossy darkness reflecting my flashlight. I stumbled backward, whispering, "Sir, are you okay?" He tilted his head, too far to one side, and said in a voice that didn't sound human, low, drawn out, echoing, "You shouldn't stop." Then he started walking toward me. I bolted for my car. My phone slipped from my hand as I ran, but I didn't care. I jumped in, slammed the door, and hit the gas so hard the tires squealed. In the mirror, I saw him step into the road, watching me leave, those pitch-black eyes still fixed on me, even as he faded into the dark. For a good 5 minutes, I drove like a maniac, trying to convince myself I hadn't just seen what I saw. But then I noticed something even worse. There was movement in the back seat. At first, just a shifting sound, like fabric brushing against leather. I didn't dare to look. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel. I kept telling myself it was my imagination, that maybe I'd left something back there that had slid around when I took off. But then, in the reflection of the rearview mirror, I saw it. A shape, human, sitting perfectly still in the middle of the back seat. I froze. I couldn't breathe. My headlights caught a road sign, rest area 2 miles, and I made the decision right there to stop. Not because I was brave, but because I was losing my mind. When I finally pulled into the rest area, I turned around fast. The back seat was empty. I sat there for a while, engine running, trying to get a grip. Then I noticed the smell again, that same metallic, rotten smell. It was stronger now. And that's when I saw the handprint. Right there, on the inside of the rear window, a long, wet smear like someone had dragged their hand down the glass from the inside. I remember whispering, no, while fumbling to start recording on my phone, but before I could, I heard tapping, soft, rhythmic, coming from the trunk. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. 3 more. I wanted to run, to just abandon the car, but the nearest house was miles away, and my phone barely had 1 bar. I decided to open the trunk. Stupid, I know, but when you're that deep into fear, your brain stops working right. I got out, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd faint. The fog had thickened, swallowing the road behind me. I grabbed the tire iron from under the seat, walked to the back, and popped the trunk. It was empty, except for the old blanket I kept in there. And it was wet, soaked through, like someone had just wrung it out. Then from the trees behind the rest area came that same dragging sound again, slow, wet, closer this time. That's when I finally lost it. I got back in, locked every door, and drove until sunrise. Didn't stop for gas, didn't stop for anything. When I got home, I parked 2 streets away because I couldn't stand looking at the car anymore. I left it there for 3 days before finally calling a tow truck. The mechanic who checked it out called me the next day. His voice was uneasy. He said, "Hey man, I found something weird under your car." He told me there were deep scratch marks, long like fingernails all along the inside of the trunk lid. And wedged inside the lining of the trunk, behind the carpet, he found a soaked piece of paper. It was torn and barely legible, but I could still read most of it. It said, "Thanks for stopping. Most people don't." When the mechanic told me about that note, something inside me cracked. I wanted to believe it was a prank, that some psycho had planted it just to mess with me. But the way he said it, the way his voice trembled, it didn't sound like a joke. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it all in my head. The car on the shoulder, the crying, that thing I saw in the woods, and the handprint on the glass. It was like my brain refused to let me rest until I understood what had really happened. So I did something stupid again. I went back. 3 nights later, just before midnight, I drove the same route down Highway 97. I had this twisted need for closure, like if I could just see it in the daylight, it would all make sense. But the fog was there again, thick and low, curling over the road like smoke. When I reached the mile marker where I'd seen the abandoned car, my stomach turned. The car was gone, but there were skid marks, faint and old, like something had swerved violently off the road. And next to them, I saw the same dark stains leading into the trees. I left my car running this time, headlights cutting through the fog, and followed the trail with a flashlight. The forest was dead quiet. No wind, no crickets, just my own footsteps crunching leaves that looked too dark to be dry. After a few minutes, I reached a small clearing. There, half buried under leaves and debris, was something metallic. I brushed away the dirt, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a license plate, a silver Chevy plate, the same one. Except the car wasn't there. Just rusted scraps and twisted metal, the remains of something that had clearly burned a long time ago. The edges were melted, and the smell of old ash still lingered in the air. And then I saw it. A small cross, wooden, rotting, leaning to one side. Someone had carved into it, crudely, unevenly, but I could still read most of it. It said, Emily Parker, 1997. The year hit me first. 1997. That car I saw was a late 1990s model. And then I remembered something else. That voice in the woods. You shouldn't stop. It wasn't a warning. It was guilt. I went home that night shaking, searching everything I could find about Emily Parker and Highway 97, and what I found still keeps me awake. In 1997, a 23-year-old woman named Emily Parker was driving home from her shift at a diner when she blew a tire on that same stretch of highway. A man, a trucker, supposedly, stopped to help her, except he wasn't there to help. He dragged her into the woods, assaulted her, and left her there to die. They didn't find her body for 3 days, and when they did, the report said she had tried to crawl back to the road. Her nails were broken, her hands were shredded. She never made it. The killer was never caught, and the worst part, witnesses said they passed by her car that night. At least 6 drivers saw the hazard lights blinking, and none of them stopped. I sat there staring at my phone screen, the article glowing in the dark, realizing what that note meant. Thanks for stopping. Most people don't. I didn't sleep after that. Couldn't. I started seeing things in the corners of my room, faint silhouettes near the window, the reflection of dark eyes in the mirror when I brushed my teeth. Every night I'd hear it again, that same dragging sound somewhere outside my apartment. It followed me for weeks. I tried to convince myself it was trauma, a hallucination born out of fear, but deep down I knew better. The night before I finally left town, I heard something that took every bit of air out of my lungs. It was my phone. I had set it down on the counter, screen down, when it suddenly started playing audio, a voice memo I'd never recorded. I picked it up with shaking hands and pressed play. The first few seconds were just static. Then came the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, then breathing, and finally that same warped, watery voice whispered, "You shouldn't stop for him." The voice was female this time. That's when I realized the man I saw on the road wasn't the one who needed help. He was the one who took it. And whatever that thing was, it wasn't trying to hurt me. It was trying to warn me. I deleted the recording. I deleted everything, moved across the country. I told myself it was over. But sometimes, when I'm driving late at night, especially when I'm tired, I'll catch a flash of hazard lights ahead of me. An old silver car, doors open. And every time I feel that same pull, that quiet voice in my head whispering, "Don't stop. Not this time." But last month, something changed. I was driving back from a friend's wedding. Empty highway, 2 a.m., and there it was again, the silver Chevy. Only this time, I didn't see anyone in the woods. No sound, no movement, just the car there, sitting there, waiting. I tried to keep driving, but as I passed it, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The hazard lights turned off, and someone stepped into the road. Not the man this time, a woman. Long hair, pale face, eyes hollow but calm. She raised one hand slowly, like she was waving goodbye, and in the glow of my tail lights, I could see the words carved faintly into the side of the car's door. "He's still out here." I don't drive at night anymore. I can't. Because every time I hear that soft scraping sound in the distance, I remember that girl crawling toward the road, bleeding, alone, and I wonder if maybe, just maybe, she still wants someone to finish what she couldn't. So, if you ever find yourself on a quiet stretch of Highway 97, and you see a silver Chevy with both doors open, keep driving, no matter how much you want to help, because sometimes the dead aren't the ones who need saving. They're the ones trying to save you. The gas gauge needle was already kissing the big fat E when I saw the sign for the last service station for the next 100 miles. 100 miles of nothing but pitch-black interstate cutting through the heart of the Arizona desert. It was my own fault. I'd been driving for 12 hours straight, running from a life that had crumbled into dust and memories back in Phoenix. The fight with Sarah, the final ugly words I couldn't take back, the slammed door that still echoed in my skull. I just had to get away, to outrun the ghost of my own failure. The darkness outside my car wasn't half as deep as the one I felt inside. The station was a lone, flickering island of sickly yellow light in an ocean of absolute black. It was the kind of place that felt abandoned even with the lights on. The buzz of the fluorescent tubes was a dying insect song, and the air was thick with the smell of stale gasoline and hot asphalt. I pulled up to the only pump, my tires crunching on gravel, and got out. The silence was immediate and heavy, pressing in on my eardrums. That's when I saw her. A figure, just standing at the edge of the light, where the pavement dissolved into the desert. A woman. Her back was to me, her long dark hair hanging limp against a simple white dress that seemed to glow in the gloom. My heart did a little stutter step. It was late, too late for anyone to just be standing out here. But grief makes you selfish, and my own was a weight too heavy to care about a stranger's troubles. I shoved the nozzle into my tank and focused on the numbers whirring by. When I glanced up again, she had turned around. She was too far to make out her features, but I could feel her looking at me. A cold finger of dread traced a path down my spine. There was something unnaturally still about her. The desert wind that rustled the dry brush nearby didn't seem to touch her hair or her dress. The pump clicked off. I fumbled with the cap, my hand suddenly clumsy. I just wanted to pay and get back on the road, to put this creepy place and its lone occupant in my rearview mirror. I hurried inside, the bell on the door jangling a harsh, lonely sound. The clerk behind the bulletproof glass was a pimply kid, maybe 19, staring at a small snow-filled TV. He didn't look up as I slid a 20 through the slot. "Who's the woman outside?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He finally dragged his eyes from the screen. "Woman?" "Yeah, in the white dress, standing out by the desert edge." His face went pale, the acne standing out like red constellations on a white sky. He shook his head, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Ain't nobody out there, mister. You're the only car I've seen in an hour." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I turned and looked through the grimy glass. She was still there, still standing, still facing me. "She's right there," I insisted, my voice rising an octave. The kid followed my gaze, then looked back at me, his eyes wide with something that looked an awful lot like fear. "Mister, I'm telling you, there's no one there." I snatched my change and bolted out the door, the kid's terrified expression seared in my mind. The air felt colder now. I kept my eyes locked on my car, refusing to look toward the desert edge, but as I reached for the door handle, a sound stopped me dead. It was a whisper, so faint, it could have been the wind, but it carried with a chilling clarity. "Please, help me." It was a woman's voice, thin and reedy, laced with a desperation that was utterly human. My fear warred with a sudden, sharp pang of guilt. What if she was in real trouble? What if she was hurt? Was I just wrapped up in my own misery? Was I just going to drive away from someone who needed help? Slowly, against every screaming instinct in my body, I turned. She was closer now, much closer, only 20 feet away. I could see her face, pale and streaked with what looked like tears. Her eyes were huge, dark pools of utter despair. She was young, maybe in her 20s, and she was real. The kid in the station was just wrong, spooked by the isolation. "Are you okay?" I called out, my voice shaky. She didn't move, but her lips parted. He left me here." A sob hitched in her throat. Can you take me to the next town? Please? I have nowhere to go." My mind raced. This was a terrible idea,
Every horror movie, every cautionary tale screamed at me to get in the car and lock the doors. But looking at her, at the raw human pain on her face, I saw a reflection of my own. I was the one who had been left too. Sarah had left me in every way that mattered. How could I abandon this woman? "Okay," I said, the word feeling foreign in my mouth. "Get in." She moved toward the passenger door, her steps silent on the gravel. She slid into the seat, bringing with her a wave of cold air and the faint coppery scent of dust. I got in, my heart hammering against my ribs. The interior light illuminated her more clearly. Her dress was simple, almost old-fashioned. It was dirty at the hem and there was a dark smudge stain on the sleeve. She kept her hands folded in her lap, her head bowed. I started the engine, the roar unnaturally loud in the silence. I pulled back onto the interstate, the twin cones of my headlights the only things holding back the absolute darkness. The miles began to tick by. The silence in the car was suffocating. "I'm Alex," I said, just to break it. She didn't look at me. "Lena," she whispered. "What happened, Lena? Who left you?" She was quiet for so long I thought she hadn't heard me. Then in that same hollow whisper she said, "We were fighting. He said terrible things. He told me to get out and walk, so I did." She finally turned her head to look at me, and her eyes were bottomless. "He just drove away. He was so angry." A cold realization dawned on me. This was my story. My fight with Sarah. The same ugly scenario playing out with different actors on this dark, lonely stage. The coincidence was too perfect, too cruel. I had a fight like that tonight, I admitted, my throat tight. With my wife, I said things I can't take back. Lena's gaze was unwavering. "Sometimes," she whispered, "you don't get a chance to take them back." Something in her tone made the hair on my arms stand up. I focused on the road, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the distant, shrinking pinprick of light from the service station. And then I saw something else. Reflected in the glass, just for a split second, Lena wasn't looking out the window. She was staring directly at the back of my head, her expression utterly blank, her eyes like black holes. When I looked at her directly, she was back to gazing out at the desert, her profile sad and delicate. My mouth went dry. I needed to get her out of my car. "The next town is about 40 minutes away," I said, my voice strained. "There's a truck stop. They can probably help you." "No," she interrupted, her voice suddenly firm. "Not there. Further. Please." The please was a command, not a request. The air in the car grew colder. I turned up the heat, but it did nothing. I could see my own breath now, pluming in the faint green light from the dashboard. My skin was crawling. I chanced another look in the rear view. This time, she was smiling, a small, cruel, knowing smile. And her reflection, it wasn't looking at me, it was looking at something on the seat beside me. Something only she could see. I couldn't take it anymore. "Look, I'm sorry, but I really think—" "He had a silver wedding band," she said, cutting me off again, her voice now a dry rustle like dead leaves, "just like yours. He was sorry, too. He came back, you know, an hour later, full of regret." I couldn't speak. I could only drive, paralyzed by a terror I didn't fully understand. "He drove this same road," Lena continued, her whisper filling the car, crawling into my ears. "In a car that felt very much like this one. He was looking for me. He never found me." My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Her reflection was gone. The passenger seat was empty. A gasp caught in my throat. I whipped my head to the side. She was still there, solid, real, staring at me. "But I found him," she said, and her voice was no longer a whisper. It was a grating, multi-layered sound, like stones grinding together. That's when I saw the road ahead. Or rather, what was on it. Illuminated in my headlights was a single high-heeled shoe lying on its side in my middle lane. A woman's shoe, identical to the one Lena was wearing. My blood ran cold. This was a loop, a terrible, repeating loop. "Pull over, Alex," the thing that was Lena said. Its smile was a rictus grin now stretching far too wide. "It's time to get out and walk." I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a halt, the tires screeching in protest. I fumbled for the door handle, for anything to get me out of this metal coffin. But her hand, cold as a January grave, clamped down on my wrist. Her strength was impossible. "You don't get to drive away," it hissed, its face inches from mine. Its eyes were now just empty black sockets. The smell of dry, ancient earth and rot filled the car. "You left her. You let your anger consume you. You are one of them, and you will always be one of mine." I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the oppressive silence of the desert. The last thing I saw was that grinning monstrous face, and the last thing I felt was the icy chill seeping into my bones, freezing me from the inside out. When the fog in my head cleared, I was standing on the side of the road. My car was gone. The world was silent and black. I was alone. I started walking, the gravel crunching under my shoes, a sound so loud it was deafening. Hours bled into one another. The sky began to lighten from black to a deep bruised purple in the east. Hope, frail and desperate, flickered in my chest. Maybe I could flag someone down. And then I saw it. A lone, flickering island of sickly yellow light in the distance, a service station. My heart leapt into my throat. I stumbled toward it, my legs weak, my throat raw. As I got closer, a car pulled up to the only pump. A man got out. He looked tired, haunted, his shoulders slumped with a weight I recognized too well. He began to fill his tank, not yet seeing me standing here at the edge of the light, where the pavement dissolves into the desert. I opened my mouth to call out, to beg for help, to warn him. But no sound came out. All that escaped my lips was a faint, reedy whisper carried on the wind. "Please, help me."